Hey guys, today we're going to be going over the step-by-step process for properly cleaning and protecting your leather interior on a couple of different scenarios. One will be a brand new car. Then we have my Cayenne, which is a daily driver, talking about disaster vehicles. And of course, I'll throw in a super exotic car as well. But first, let's go over to the whiteboard and get nerdy. Okay, now we're at my favorite place to be, which of course is the whiteboard. We have our x-axis and the y. X down here is going to be the new car, like I mentioned before, the daily driver, which is my car, and of course a disaster. The reason I put these three here is this gives you the basic, the meat of the bell curve of pretty much all the cars you're going to be working on from new to really horrible disaster. The y-axis is the potential of clean. How clean can we get this particular car? The purpose of me putting this on a whiteboard is just to demonstrate what are you thinking about when you're going in to clean this car? How clean can I potentially get it? So if you look up here, this would be brand new, the top of the y-axis. And we have a brand new car, and let's say we've got all this. This is the cleanliness of it. And we're just missing just this little bit right up here. And now we can go in there, we can lightly wipe it down, and we move this bar all the way up to here, and it's pretty darn close to being brand new. And we're going to show that in a minute. Now we have the daily driver, and it's basically clean. It's about 50% clean. And I can get all the way up to here, and I do all these techniques, and I get it super clean, and it's wonderful. But notice, I cannot get it to brand new. That's pretty realistic. But what most people sort of fail to recognize when they go in and work on their car, they're like, I can get this thing to be brand new. Now, I don't want to discourage anyone from thinking that, hey, I can try to do this the best I can. Yes, no problem there. But this is where you get into danger. And we're going to talk about that a little bit. So if I go in there and try to scrub it and try to, oh man, I got to make this new, you can actually damage it in that process. So the point I'm making is you really got to recognize where you are. And I'll give you another analogy in a second after this one. Disaster, now it's like marginally clean. But if I were to go all the way up here and clean it and get it as clean as possibly could, look at the space between where this is and where brand new is. That is a huge space, and you have to recognize that going in. Now, the real world analogy I'll give is, let's say, you know, you're a person, human. If you have a 20-year-old and a 50-year-old and an 80-year-old, and a doctor goes in to try to assess them as to what they can do to make things better or whatever, you know, to fix them, you're going to have different diagnosis for the 20, the 50, and the 80-year-old. In this analogy, let's say you're, I don't know, running a marathon. Likely the 20-year-old is going to be able to last longer than the 50-year-old, and the 50-year-old is going to last longer than the 80, and so on, because of the age of the material, the abuse that has been taken on that body. If we can make a little bit of a loose analogy to the leather in your car, it kind of is sort of like that. If you have a really old car, you have to be extra careful. It's not going to be as pliable. It's not going to be as strong, and you're going to have to approach it a little bit differently. So the point of this kind of crazy whiteboard here is just to make sure that we're not just using, not everything is cookie cutter, not everything is just set it and forget it. We have to kind of recognize what we're actually working on, where we could potentially get to, and that may not be absolute brand new perfection, and that's okay. If we're trying not to jeopardize the integrity of the interior and we're trying to keep it as original as possible, that's something that you need to sort of recognize before you go in and work on a car. Now, keep in mind that up until about the mid-1970s, most car leather interiors came uncoated. In other words, they didn't have a thin polyurethane layer on top of it to protect the leather from premature wearing, stain absorption, or UV protection, which would have prolonged the life of the material. By the late 1990s to the early 2000s, nearly all automotive leather interiors, especially the mid to high production vehicles, came with some type of polyurethane or acrylic coating applied at the tannery that was nearly indistinguishable to the customer. Although for the most part super high-end brands had coated leather, they still offered uncoated leather in their heritage hides or their special editions for a more luxurious feel. However, it is safe to say that if your car is from 2000 or newer, it probably has or had some type of polyurethane over that leather. Now, before we get into the actual cleaning process of the car, I think it's important to understand the three most common tools and their abrasiveness levels as we go through these three cars. First one right off the bat, microfiber towel. You spray a little lather on there, wipe it down. Pretty easy, very not abrasive, and that's really good on brand new cars. And if you do that on a regular basis, meaning a maintenance regimen, you can pretty much stay in this area. Now, if we go to a car that hasn't been maintained on a regular basis, it's a couple years old, it's a daily driver, You've seen this 1,000 times in my episodes. It's pretty much the cars that I do from a detailing perspective when customers come in here. I'll use an interior brush, or I'll use the scrub brush, and this has just got more bristles in a flat area, so I can work larger areas of leather, and this would be more precise for buttons and things like that. But I use lather, scoop it up. I'll show you the technique right now. I would say it's slightly more aggressive, but not really. It's more precise, I would say. So these two are kind of in the same area. Now, if we go down the spectrum of the scale this way, this is when we start getting pretty aggressive. This is a scrubber or a scrub pad for the interior. It's basically a mesh on top of foam, and what it does is it really gets aggressive with stains, and it's very good at removing them. At the same time though, if you go too far, if you're too aggressive, you're too much pressure, you can actually remove the dye in the process. But that's just a quick overview. Again, I'll go step by step for each car, but those are basically the three main tools that I use for DIY sort of situations. If we get into professional, we can use steam, we can use a couple other things, but this is the crux. This is, again, the bell curve of the cleaning tools that you'll need to clean your car. So here's our brand new car. It's an Audi e-tron GT. It has a couple thousand miles. Now, to maintain this, you're gonna take lather, spray it on the towel, and of course, give it a wipe in the high traffic areas, the high touch areas. Up in here, if he puts his arm out the window, of course, the steering wheel and the seat. Now, if nobody else goes in the car, you can really just maybe focus on the driver's side. If you have a bunch of kids, then you're gonna have to repeat this on the rest of the car. Now, the maintenance routine is usually once every week, at minimum once every 2 weeks. Now, what's interesting about brand new cars, as I mentioned before, is there is a coating on this, especially a brand new one, and it's about 25 microns thick. Now, what that means in terms of an analogy is 25 microns is equivalent to 1 mil on the outside of your paint, meaning the clear coat. So there's paint and then there's clear coat on top of it. That clear coat is generally in a new car about 5, 6, maybe 7, but let's call it 5 or 6 mils thick. 25 microns is 1 mil. So in other words, the coating that's on the interior of your car is about 1/5 the thickness of the clear coat that's on the outside of your car. So it's incredibly thin. We're talking like the thickness, thinner than a hair, like very, 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 very thin. My point being is, if you maintain this on a regular basis and you don't have to go in and be more aggressive, you can keep that coating on there as long as possible without, again, jeopardizing the integrity of the strength of that. Now, in terms of maintenance, of course, I'm going to recommend mousse. The reason why is there's UV protection in there. Now, a lot of people say, hey, won't that not penetrate down through the coating? And the answer is yes, it's not going to. But what it is going to do is put a layer on top of it of UV protection, especially in a car, let's say in Florida or somewhere it's really getting a lot of heat and a lot of sun exposure. You're going to need that UV protection on top of it. The same concept of the clear coat. We're not actually polishing the paint, we're polishing the clear coat. We're not actually cleaning the leather, we're cleaning the coating on top of the leather, and we still need to protect that. Now, the second thing that mousse does is decrease the friction that takes place by getting in and out and touching every single part of the leather. And the reason why that's really important is that's the main reason why a lot of the coatings degrade over time. So for instance, if you're getting in and out of your car, the seat bolster right here, we've all seen it, it starts to wear and it starts to sort of degrade faster than other parts of the car. Why? Because we're getting in, and as we get in, our legs rub against the material and then wear away that coating. What mousse does is not only the UV protection from the sun, but it also adds in a lot of anti-friction or a little bit of slick. It doesn't make the seat slippery, but down deep into the molecules, into the pores of that coating, it's going to add a little anti-friction in there so that you can reduce that wear over time, thus making the material last a whole lot longer. So we clean it really easily. We can maintain and protect it with mousse. UV, again, anti-stick or anti-friction. And then we just really have to focus on the maintenance part of a brand new car. If you do this on a regular basis, you don't have to go into the next step that we're going to talk about. You definitely don't have to go into the disaster. So just like the analogy I always make, you don't go to the gym once a year and think you're going to be super strong. You have to go on a regular basis. Same thing with respect to the interior of a brand new car. Okay, next up is the daily driver. This, of course, is my Cayenne. I absolutely love it. It's my baseball mobile. I beat the heck out of this thing. Now, there's a little bit of a different process with respect to daily drivers, and this one is a little on the extreme side because I do so much with it, and it does get a lot of abuse. So right off the bat, you can see I have the seat guard on. The reason I do that is for twofold. One, I always have a child getting in the car that is completely filthy and usually full of, baseball diamond dust and grass and whatever that's on there, right? And then they're going to transfer that into the seat, and that cleaning out and cleaning out and transfer, if you continue to do that on a regular basis, you just tend to wear out the material. So that's the difference between a daily driver and, let's say, a brand new car. So I'll show you a step-by-step process, super simple and easy, but I do recommend a seat guard if you have major abuse like this one here. Quick tip when using the brush, it's probably my biggest pet peeve, is you come in here, you can see that there's marks. This is just from getting in and out, probably with my shoe or whatever. Put a little bit of lather on here. What I see sometimes is people will take the brush and they'll push it and they'll make it flat like that. That's not actually doing anything. It's spreading out all the fibers, and the fibers can actually tickle the surface, thus creating the lather and being able to pull all the oils or whatever dirt off the material. So what you're gonna do is just barely push a little bit, and as you start to do that, look, you see how it starts turning white? That's what's tickling. If you push too much like this, it can't really do anything. You're taking all the strength of the tips of the fibers out, and you're using the sides of the fibers, which is fine, but it's actually not as good as using the tip. So you're just gonna have it so it barely bends a little bit, and then move it back and forth. And as soon as you do that, you'll see, look at the lather that's been created. Now, you don't wanna wait too long with this lather. So once you get this kind of like probably about that much, you can see the lather is going to start to dry. You don't want to do that. You want to immediately scoop it. The reason why is all of that oil, all of that dirt has been lifted to the surface. Yeah, it looks much better. Has been lifted to the surface, and you want to scoop it away before it dries again back down on the surface. At the end of the world, no, you can just spray lather again and wipe it with a towel, but you gotta have to work a little bit here. But again, I see this all the time where you just smash the bristles in, and the harder you push is not going to, one, help the cleaning, and two, you're gonna ruin your brush, so keep that in mind. Now, steering wheels are the most disgusting part of your car. There's actually a study out there, I gotta find it somewhere, that said that steering wheels contain more bacteria than most common toilet bowl or toilet seats. And that's obviously disgusting, but if you think about it for a second, you're like, you know what? That kind of makes sense, because your hands are obviously really gross, and you touch everything in your car, okay, but I don't necessarily squeeze it like I do this one. So if your hands got junk on them and you hold the steering wheel for hours and you're squeezing them, all the oils combined with the bacteria, it is just embedding itself in the steering wheel. And I don't mean just like, oh, it's dirty. I genuinely feel like over time, you're holding your steering wheel for hours and hours and hours. You're just kind of, I guess, pushing or compressing all that junk into the leather itself, which I think is one of the reasons why, if you were really just to rub leather, you're gonna get it really shiny. You combine that with the bacteria. Anyways, it's super gross. So I'm gonna show you 3 different ways to do it. So to clean it, I can't say this enough. It's a regular maintenance for step 1, right? Certainly on a brand new car, in a car like this, you spray a little lather on a towel, go like this, put it in, and then you can do it gently, but you can sort of give it a rub like this, and you're good to go. Yikes. And I didn't even know that was that bad, but I don't know if you can see it on camera, but that's pretty bad already. That's just from baseball stuff, but that's step number 1. Step number 2 is you take a towel, you throw it behind here, and then you can spray a little bit on the steering wheel. Again, this one needs a lot because it's embarrassingly gross actually on camera here. And then I take my brush, and then I go in and I kind of tickle the area again to lift as much of that oil up, just like we did on the rest there, the armrest. Go in, and then I can do this, right? And that's gonna help. The third way, this is the reason why I wanted to do this on camera, is we're gonna talk about this in the next segment here, but the scrub pad. The scrubber, you take and you get it nice and soaked. You really wanna fill this up, and you squeeze it so it's now full of lather. So you can actually see on my fingers, lather. Then I'll go back in, and in theory, spray a little bit there. I'll spray a little bit on the steering wheel. This is where it gets a little bit tricky. So if it's very bad, I can go in and give it a gentle rub. But on these, particularly this one, I'll show you in a little bit of film that I took earlier. This one's starting to fade. It is now 11 plus years old. I've cleaned it 1,000 times. it's starting to go and you'll see little dots, which means the material is starting to wear out. So I don't recommend this on a regular basis, but if you noticed, it was white when I started. Watch, I barely touched this. This is right live on camera here. Watch after I barely touch it. I only did this once just for you on camera. Do you see that right there? That's a little bit of the dye coming off. Now, I don't recommend you do that on a regular basis. If it's really bad, maybe it's super high oil, okay, fine. I know this one like intimately because I've cleaned this 1,000 times. I knew it was gonna do that. So I did that on camera for you just to show you that's what happens when the dye starts to transfer. It's okay, I'm gonna go in and I'll re-dye this, you know, another episode or whatever. So I'm fine to kind of take one for the team here, but you have to be careful. If you see that, that's not dirt, that's dye that came off. Because if you notice, I cleaned it first and then I did this to kind of prove my point. So the point is you have to be a little bit careful when you start using scrub pads. You can do it, but be gentle. I recommend regular maintenance with a towel and lather. And if you want to get crazy, just like we were doing before, you can use the interior brush as well. So make sure you maintain the steering wheel, not just from like the aspect of keeping your car clean. It's because it's disgusting and you're getting in and out. So I'm working on some stuff to make sure that your hands are clean. Just like when you tap your feet off when you get in, you don't want to have junk on the floor, which I have a little bit of baseball stuff on the floor now. You want to make sure your hands are as clean as possible, especially if you had an Alcantara steering wheel. That's what drove me nuts about my Taycan. I loved my Taycan, but the steering wheel Alcantara, just like in the GT3, drives me insane because I have to have my hands perfectly clean. And you kind of can't always do that if you're in the middle of a parking lot or whatever. And one of the best parts about doing this on perforated leather is if you put it in a microfiber towel, the fibers themselves stick up and then you can get into the little holes. Now, if I were to do this with a foam applicator and you spray down the foam and then you put it in, you'll fill the holes with the UV protection, and you don't want to do that because it's just a pain in the butt to get out. So as soon as I put on a microfiber towel, those little fingers get in each little hole and you can see there's no white blotches anywhere. So you're gonna let that sit for a little bit, soak in, and then you're gonna go back in once it starts to dry after a couple of minutes, and then dry it and then wipe it off, and it'll be a matte finish, and now you have UV protection, and you'll also have a little bit of that lubrication we talked about to make sure that we're avoiding as much rubbing as possible. Okay, now on to our disaster vehicle. This is where I have the most fun because I think we learn a lot from these types of vehicles. If you come over here, you can see there is a lot of wear and tear already on the car, lots of dirt, lots of grime. So right off the bat, using the microfiber towel, I may not exactly go to that because it's just overwhelmingly dirty in here, but it's a good start. Then I would probably go in with the brush for most of this. But before we do any of that, I want to show you something interesting. Now on my Cayenne, I started to show you, again, this is a brand new one, and you can see there's nothing on it. On my Cayenne, as I gently wiped, you can see that it transferred. This is as if my Cayenne went another 4 or 5 years of rubbing. You can see that this isn't dirt. This is just missing dye. So as an example, and again, we're gonna do this just for you on camera here. I'm going to fill this up. Make sure this area is soaked. I don't really need much for this example, but you notice right here, do you see how black it is right there? I want to make sure we have that on camera before I start wiping. Most people will think, hey, this is really dirty and I need to scrub this more. So I'm going to show you what not to do, just as an example. Here, both white. So I'm going to come in and I'm going to scrub this. Oh yeah, it's really dirty. Let's see. Am I removing the dirt? Am I removing the grime from years of touching the seatbelt? So when they come in here, they keep scrubbing and they go, wait a second, it's not coming off. Let me keep scrubbing even more. Now remember what it was before, how deep and black it was before. But as I come in here and keep rubbing, then you're going along, okay. And then you go, oh, wait a second. Now I've just removed even more of the dye and now I'm getting into the leather. So if I wipe this, you can see incrementally, I just added about another centimeter or so of the brownness. The brownness here is not dirt. I'm sure it is dirty, there's no question about that, but it's because the dye is missing, and you can see it came off here. So I just use this as an example because this car is obviously a disaster car, I get it, but you can see the difference here. This is great. This right here is dirt, and you see where the pad stopped? Now it's very white. If I continue to go on this area right here, it'll turn like that. I'll remove the dye. This is the last little bit of dye because this isn't really high traffic-y. This is high traffic. Right here is still just a little bit of remaining dye. So that's what it could look like. So if I come in here Now, and I just use a brush. So I'm just going to be very, very gentle. If I use my brush, let's see if we can get this area to look like this. Boom. Do you see how quickly I just removed that dirt without jeopardizing the integrity of the die? Right here is where the die is starting to go. So my point's been proven that this is not dirt. It only got more black, more, more deep color, brown, whatever this is, as I scrubbed. So be very careful and avoid that from happening. So here, I'm just going to spray the rest of it down and clean it up. And then we'll move on to when I really want you to use the scrub pad. Take this behind. But far too gone. Just way not strong enough to go after the scrub pad. So I'll come in, you can see the towel is clean. I don't know if you can catch that on camera, but that's pretty gross. If this was a white towel, you'd see that really evident. So again, this is just sort of a cadaver that we're testing stuff on just to kind of prove a point. Let me show the armrest right now and when is the proper time. This is the perfect time to use the scrub pad. So pull the camera in and I'll show you how to do that. Perfect example of when to use the scrub pad because this is relatively strong material and it's incredibly dirty. So you're gonna take lather and this, like we showed you before, but now I'm gonna use the whole thing back and forth. And I'm gonna squeeze this so that all the material, watch my finger, see it? Now I have a lot of suds in there. And we'll use it on the clean side. That was the side I just used on the steering wheel. Then I'm gonna go in, I'll soak half this material so I can show you a 50-50. Then I'm gonna go in and scrub. The point I was making before with the steering wheel is that material was just so weak that it's just not strong enough to be able to be used with the scrub pad. It'll disintegrate. Okay, this is what it looks like afterwards. I would say that that's the clean area and that's the dirty area. And then I'll go in and wipe this down. Now look at the difference between that and that. That's when the scrub pad comes in really handy, situations like this. When it comes to disgusting seats like this, I use a little bit of a hybrid method as well. First I'll go in, I'll do 50-50 here. And I like to quickly go in with the brush and get all the seams and the creases and crevices. That's where the brush really excels. But this seat is such a hot mess that I'm gonna need to do a little bit more. So I'll do this first, then I go in with the scrub pad. And when I'm doing that, I'm just kind of making sure, taking an extra little double check as I go in, pull the seams open a little bit, because this one is just so far gone that it needs that extra scrubbing power. Then, oof, yikes, look at that. That's not the color it should be. It's pretty gross. Then I can go in and wipe it down and double check. And I usually am a little bit more conservative because as you saw on the steering wheel, this can remove material and the die is already starting to go because again, this is a disaster. But the idea is I'm trying to show you when you can sort of use this and when not to use it and when to kind of come in and just sometimes on like brand new seats, if there's a stain, I'll go just like that real quick. And then I go back and forth. So this is a very useful tool. You just have to be careful. It's more like a scalpel than a butter knife. So I'll do this a few more times, show you the 50-50. It'll be 10 times cleaner. And then I'm gonna head over and show you how to clean this real quick before we actually put silk on here. When you're done with your scrub pad, you can see this is the clean one, this is the dirty one. Really easy. Take a little bit of Brute, or if you have foam around, put it on the pad, run some water through it, and scrub itself. You can see it'll just start to come super clean. That's what's great about these. They last a long time. They're really helpful in an emergency. And you'll see as soon as I'm done squishing this out, warm water works great as well. There you go. Is it perfect? No, but it's much closer than what it was 2 seconds ago. So that's how you clean it when you're using your scrub pad. After cleaning a disaster leather interior like this one here, we do have to protect it. To protect it, we're gonna be using a product like silk. And now that is a bit of a bump up from mousse, and here's why. As soon as you take the cap off, you can see That's a bomb. It's very, very thick. So you're gonna take your microfiber applicator, get a little bit in there on the applicator and the microfibers, and then you're going to take those fibers and really massage. You can see I'm pushing pretty hard in there. And the reason why is there's no protection on this material at all. It's either worn off or I've just used the scrubber to take the last remaining bit because it's just so disgusting. Sometimes you have to do what you have to do. And in this case, it was so gross that we needed the scrubber. And so once you put this in, you'll feel that it's very thick. And that's the idea. So this is adding UV protection. It's making it a little bit more soft and supple because it is starting to get brittle. And it's adding that anti-friction element that's really important that you can see here. The getting in and out is just grinding the material away, no less the coating that was once on here. So we're going to let it sit. So let's pretend we let it sit for 4 or 5 minutes. It's going to absorb into the material. And then afterwards you go in with a microfiber towel and you buff it dry. And it'll be nice and matte. It won't be slick. But this is a very heavy duty product, more of a restorative when the leather is in really rough shape. So you're going to clean it and then you're going to protect and maintain it with silk. Now lastly, I wanted to show you something a little bit nerdy with respect to the Ferrari. Now on the Audi, you remember we had about 25 to 30 microns of a protective coating over the leather. On Ferrari, they do it a little bit differently. Come over here. So on the inside, we all know Ferraris, they smell really great. The leather is incredibly soft and they're really well known for that, right? The difference is there is a protective coating on it, but that coating is much thinner. It's 10 microns. And the reason why is you want that suppleness, that true leather feeling to come through. Now the downside is it's not going to be as protective, but that kind of makes sense because this wouldn't necessarily be considered a daily driver. Of course, this is a Lusso, so it's a little bit of a bad example, but normally a Ferrari is not your everyday Honda Civic where you're getting in and out of that kind of thing. So I find that very interesting that they do have a coating. It is cleaned the same way as the Audi that we just showed you, but it does have a little bit of a thinner protective coating on it so that you can really kind of feel the trueness, what they call the heritage of these kind of supercars and hypercars and that kind of thing. So I find it interesting how they make the interiors for the particular cars. Let's say Honda Civic is going to be a little bit different than a Ferrari because of the particular buyers. But all in all, it's about protecting the interior, cleaning it properly, and making sure that it has a very long life. As always, guys, if you have any questions about the techniques, tools, anything, reach out to me at ammonyc.com. Thanks for watching. We'll see you the next time.